Well, welcome back, my friends, to another episode of George's GLP-1 journey where science meets real life, one injection, one meal, and one surprisingly thoughtful conversation at a time. So if you're new here, I welcome you. I am George Logan, husband, dad, granddad, scientist, and a guy doing his level best to make healthy aging a little more informed and a lot more doable. So today's episode is going to be a little different. This is a special edition in my series GLP-1s for seniors. We'll be back next time, probably by the end of the week, with the usual weekly update, the weigh-in, the side effects, and the ongoing saga of my own Tirzepatide adventure, which, as always, just refuses to be boring. But for this episode, I decided to take what I'll call an unofficial poll. So what I did is I combed through what thousands of GLP-1 users are reporting online, and believe me, there's tons of it. And I also looked at what medical professionals are seeing in their clinics, and then I connected all of it to what the science already tells us. And from that, we pulled together the top 10 things GLP-1 users wish they knew before they started. Not to scare anyone, but to make this journey smoother, more successful, and honestly, a whole lot more encouraging. So this will be a two-parter. In this video, what we're going to do is dive into the first 5. The next 5 are coming soon, so keep an eye out for that one. All right, my friends, shall we just jump right into it? All right, so let's start with the big one, the thing most GLP-1 users talk about first, early side effects. So across thousands of user reports and in almost every clinical overview that I looked, we see the same pattern. The first few weeks can bring some combination of nausea, fatigue, burping, constipation, diarrhea, or just feeling not quite myself, but I can't put my finger on why. But honestly, it all makes sense. Your stomach is emptying more slowly. Your appetite is shifting. Your blood sugar is smoothing out, and your body is basically saying, hey, hello, is anyone going to tell me why all these settings have just changed? But here's the part people forget. Not everyone gets these side effects. In fact, a surprising number of folks report barely anything at all. Some feel a little queasy, some get mild fatigue, and some sail through the first month like they're on placebo. I wish that was me. My own journey, well, pretty mild so far. I have a little constipation here and there, nothing too dramatic. And honestly, that's not unusual. Again, we tend to hear the tougher stories online because people who feel totally fine rarely jump into comment sections to announce, hey, nothing happened, thanks for asking. The good news is this. For those who do feel uncomfortable, most symptoms fade dramatically by weeks 4 or 8 as the body adjusts, and that's pretty normal. And what we found is that across user communities and medical guidance, the same tried and true strategies usually show up. Smaller meals, slower eating, staying well hydrated, ginger, peppermint, or warm teas when they're needed. Here's to you. A slightly slower dose escalation perhaps for the next month. So yes, early side effects are quite common, but they're usually temporary and they're usually quite manageable. And they get a whole lot easier as your body learns this new rhythm. Okay, so you ready for the next one now? Now let's talk about something almost every GLP-1 user eventually notices, but very few expect this at the beginning. Your appetite will fluctuate. And most people assume GLP-1 medications create one steady, predictable level of appetite suppression, like maybe flipping a switch from hungry to not hungry, and then calmly walking away. But that's not how it plays in real life. Across user reports, In the medical guidance, we see a very clear pattern. You may feel less hungry right after your injection, and gradually a little more hungry as the week goes on. And some users even describe a hungry day right before their next dose. Not overeating, not losing control, just noticing that the appetite suppression isn't quite as firm at the end of the cycle. And clinically, that makes perfect sense. These medications follow a weekly rhythm. Blood levels rise, they peak, and then they drift gently back down. Your appetite often follows the same curve, kind of like your body's own little tide chart. But here's the reassuring part. Not everyone feels these shifts. Some people experience steady suppression all week long, barely a wiggle. Personally, I've had only mild changes so far, nothing again too dramatic, and nothing even remotely difficult to manage. And once again, that actually lines up with a lot of users' experience. We tend to hear more online from folks that actually struggle. And from the many who don't give it a second thought, we don't hear a thing. For those who do notice the ups and downs, the solutions, according to both users and clinicians, are surprisingly simple. Get enough protein each day. Space your meals so you don't crash. Don't skip too many meals in a row. As a matter of fact, don't skip any meals. And hydrate well, because dehydration can make hunger feel hungrier than it actually is. So what's the big takeaway? Fluctuating appetite is absolutely normal, and it's not the sign of medication not working. It's just your body moving through the weekly rhythm. And with a little planning, these fluctuations become totally manageable. All right, are we ready for the next one? All right, so let's move into a topic that almost every GLP-1 user brings once they're just a few weeks in: hydration and fiber. Now, before starting these medications, most of us think, myself included, sure, I drink water, and yes, I get some fiber and probably doing just fine. But here's what both the science and thousands of user experiences make very clear. GLP-1 medications slow down digestion on purpose. And that means your body often needs a little extra support to keep everything kind of moving comfortably along. In fact, the number one side effect reported on Tirzepatide as well as Semaglutide across forums, clinics, and studies is, you guessed it, constipation. Now, not everyone gets it. And for many people, it's only an early adjustment. But for those who feel it, hydration and fiber makes a huge difference. So here's the good news. This does not require an advanced degree in nutrition or a 37-point plan. Users consistently report success with just a few simple habits. Drinking water steadily throughout the day, not just chugging a gallon down at 9 p.m. Adding some natural fibers like chia seeds or ground flax, maybe taking a supplement or two on inulin, and then increasing fiber gradually to avoid turning yourself into a balloon. And when needed, a gentle magnesium supplement, which I highly recommend. Now, clinically, this lines up perfectly with what physicians actually recommend. Again, slow digestion means the colon pulls more water out of the stool. And so hydration and fiber puts that moisture back and keeps things moving the way they're supposed to. Okay, for me personally, hydration has been the big key. Just a little extra attention to fluids and daily fiber has kept everything smooth, predictable, and I dare say mostly uneventful 80 to 90% of the time. I have my days. And once again, not everyone notices major changes. Some folks sail right through with close to zero digestive complaints. But for anyone who does run into issues, hydration and fiber are absolute game changers. All right, are we ready for the next one? Now let's talk about something that doesn't nearly get enough attention: muscle loss. So when people think about GLP-1 medications, they think about appetite dropping. They think about weight coming off and metabolic health improving. What many, however, don't think about until they read the fine print or compare a few before and after photos is that losing weight too quickly can take muscle right along with the fat. And that's really not unique with GLP-1s. It's because anytime you cut calories significantly, your body starts making budget decisions. And unfortunately, muscle sometimes ends up on the chopping block. But because GLP-1s suppress appetite so effectively, it becomes incredibly easy to accidentally undereat, especially protein. Across user reports and in clinical guidance, we see the same pattern. People who eat too little or skip meals too often tend to lose more lean mass than they expected. But here's the encouraging part. This is totally manageable with a few simple habits that a lot of long-term users say made all the difference. Solution number one, protein. Getting steady protein at each meal, say 30 grams or so, helps protect the lean issue while still allowing fat loss to continue. Solution number two, strength training. And don't worry, it doesn't mean you need to join the powerlifting team. So what we've seen is that across user communities, the most successful strategy is just 2 or 3 short sessions per week, maybe 20 to 30 minutes, of bodyweight exercises, resistance bands, and some dumbbells. Just enough to send a message to your muscles, a polite one, but a firm one, that says, hey, we still need you. And the science backs this up. Even modest resistance training dramatically reduces muscle loss during weight reduction with or without GLP-1s. And once again, not everyone loses lean mass. Some people maintain it easily, especially those who stay active and keep their protein intake consistent. All right, for me personally, moderate intensity strength training has really been a critical part of the journey. I'm not trying to build big muscles. I'm just trying to protect what I have and to stay strong, capable, and hopefully aging in the right direction. All right. Are we ready for the last one in part one? Now let's talk about something almost every long-term GLP-1 user encounters eventually. Your relationship with food begins to change. Now most people expect to feel less hungry, and that's no big mystery. But what does surprise a lot of users is that certain foods simply don't sit the same way anymore. Across thousands of user reports, the biggest offenders are sugary foods, fried foods, very fatty meals, and those oversized portions we all used to handle just fine, but we don't anymore. And this is not because the medication is punishing you, but because your stomach is emptying more slowly, and those foods can suddenly feel like a bowling ball landing in a bird's nest. And clinically, that makes absolute perfect sense. When digestion slows, high sugar and high fat meals can trigger nausea, bloating, and discomfort. It's basically your body's polite way of saying, let's not do that again. But here's the encouraging twist. For many people, this becomes one of the most helpful changes of all. Foods that once had a grip, sweets, fast food, greasy comfort meals, most often lose their appeal. Not because you're suddenly overflowing with extra willpower, but because your physiology is gently shifting your preferences towards meals that feel better and are better for your body. And when your tastes start changing, your choices start changing along with them, naturally, without a battle of willpower and without the old sense of food wrestling for control. And of course, not everyone experiences such dramatic shifts. Some people just still love the same foods as before, just in smaller portions or in a more relaxed pace. And that's perfectly normal. In my own journey, the biggest change has been a smoother sense of balance, a clearer "that's enough" signal, and a natural pull towards foods that feel nourishing and are nourishing, rather than heavy or overwhelming. And these early adjustments, whether digestive, appetite related, or taste related, are real, but they're also temporary and manageable. For many people, they're profoundly beneficial. And as we step back from this first set of 5 things GLP-1 users wish they'd known sooner, it's important to remember something the medical community is saying very clearly and very loudly. GLP-1 medications do far more than reduce appetite. They're transforming metabolic health. They're improving blood sugar, inflammation, cholesterol, mobility, energy, and of course, an overall quality of life. And these temporary bumps along the way are small compared to the long-term gains of better health, renewed vitality, a sense of control, and freedom from decades of yo-yo dieting or shame. And if you're already on this journey, my friend, take heart. Your body is healing, your habits are strengthening, and your future may be brighter than you can even imagine or realize. And if you're still considering GLP-1 medications, talk with your healthcare provider, review the science like I did even before I began, and listen to the experience of thousands who have found real hope again. Now, that wraps part 1. We covered the first 5 things GLP-1 users wish they'd known sooner. And part 2 will be coming out in just a few days with the next 5 insights you won't want to miss. So my friends, I thank you for being here. If this episode was helpful, please subscribe, leave a comment, or share with someone who might need some encouragement today. And until next time, stay well, stay curious, and stay encouraged. I'll see you in part 2.